Hello, this is Shariananda saying welcome to my clientele and also to my friends and neighbors around the world. I am coming to you from Denmark, a wonderful Copenhagen, and today's date is July the 11th, I think perhaps it might be the 10th, July the 10th, 2014. This is Topics, and every week what we provide for you is a little insight into the world of my advising. So I am, as you know, a clairvoyant, spiritual advisor, and life coach. And what I do is I look into people's lives as given to me by the Holy Spirit and give them advice based on what I hear. Luckily, many people have their own faith, and so between the two of us, we often have a terrific spiritual energy passing, and things come out in truth, in spiritual and in truth. So please continue to follow me here on YouTube or my website, bricksite.com/Shariananda. All right, today we're going to be talking first about a person who has spiritual gifts and has tried to use them in the world and has gotten a lot of poor feedback from those with whom she has been associated. So here is the subject. I don't want to open myself to anything spiritual any longer. And this comes to me with this explanation. Hello, I wish to set my question before you. I have been spiritually open to spirit for 5 years now, and I don't want it anymore. I have many psychic skills, and I think they are a curse. Every time I told people about my beliefs, I've gotten hurt many times. I was even on YouTube and shared my beliefs and was hurt by the people on there, the so-called self-righteous. How can I ignore this or have all of this taken away from me? I did not ask to have psychic abilities. So here's what I wrote back. Dear one, you will never be given anything you cannot bear. Your gifts are meant to be used for good. May you learn that in time your gifts will be a blessing to you. So it is a process of learning and climbing and growing. I know it's scary and it's hard to handle if you've grown up in a super religious and fundamental background or an environment where people are superstitious and frightened by that which they don't understand. So, by having received these gifts, you are asked to transcend not only your environment and the attitudes that people have, but you have to transform your own mind and nature to accord yourself the power to use the gifts properly because they are not misplaced if they have been given. Your declaration of not wanting to use your talents where they are not well received is understandable. But remember, Jesus had many of these gifts. And think about the woman at the well, whom he told how many husbands she'd had and how many times she'd been married. And also the centurion's daughter. The centurion came to Jesus and said, could you come and at least send your power out and heal my daughter? You don't even have to come. And Christ said, yeah, his faith was great in that he had come knowing that the healing could be done. And Christ healed the girl from far away. So it's not like Jesus was not psychic. They don't prefer to call him psychic in the churches and in the places where he is talked about. But he had very many psychic gifts, and he had psychometry, and he had telepathy. So the gifts that Christ had, he said, we also had. He said that we know that we are gods, and that the same things that he did, we ourselves can do. So these are not foreign gifts. People misconstrue many things when they say, oh, the Bible teaches against sorcery. The Bible teaches against psychics. The Bible includes many circumstances where there are people who provide answers. David himself, who advised King King Saul was a seer, a dreamer who could come up with prophecy to help the king ward off his enemies. So you'll have to look back at your training and your teaching and read the Bible for yourself with a careful eye. In many instances, there were oracles and soothsayers. Even the day Jesus was born, soothsayers were part of the three wise men who came from the east to just know and recognize his birth. So I don't want you to be frightened by who you are and the gifts that you're given. One last thing I want to say about Jesus is that when people accused him of being some kind of sorcerer or having the devil in him or being full of demons, as they sometimes called them, Christ said, just judge me by the work that I do, because I do this work from my Father who is in me, and my Father has sent me to do this work. So look at what comes of this work, and then you can see whether or not I am of God or of the devil. And that is what you will need to come to. Whether you are of God is the question you must settle. And you cannot argue with people who don't understand. You can't convince the ignorant and the fearful that what you have is something good. You just need to continue to work through it. And when it's painful, and if you're in a position to do so, you move away from those kind of people and you develop yourself to be of service. It took me about 10 years to feel safe enough to use my gifts and confident enough to know my range of powers. And I've been at it over almost 30 years now. And it took me a while to settle down, because I too, like you, was wondering what was the nature of this gift and who was behind it. But I have to admit to you now that I have given up the notion of the devil. So if you're still caught in that thinking, and it's not, and you haven't developed to the point where you can see that God is in everything and everywhere and see the good and the possibility for good in our lives, then you'll have to wait until you come to that peace. Anyway, I don't want to talk you into anything. I will simply share a little of my initial experience with you. Um, I discovered my gifts as a child, and then didn't realize what they were, especially since I had prophetic dreams and dreams that would come true. I would also have nightmares, and I was afraid that the devil was chasing me, or my mother actually said that sometimes, that the devil or a witch was riding on me. So, of course, I had an active imagination, and as an oracle, the way I operate is by streaming a lot of times the consciousness that and the energies that are good around me, so that I can know without knowing. So sometimes I just start talking, and that which must be said comes out of me, and I have no conscious control over those things, with the exception, of course, being kind and compassionate and trying to represent the love of God. In any case, I grew up in a world that was pretty frightened by the idea of witches and ghosts and all kinds of silly. People could put hoodoos and voodoos and spells on you. So, of course, I had some of that too. But my gifts included being able to sympathize and understand animals. And I could touch things and know the history or some idea about what this is or what's going on with them. I also had the ability to touch people and to make their bodies well, in some cases make their minds well. So I grew up in a world where only God was supposed to heal. God knew all. You didn't take over the powers of God. You didn't act like you were God. So I can understand what you're saying when you say you are really quite frightened and don't want any parts to do with it because you haven't gotten any good feedback. But I want you to know I didn't either. That initially many people pretended like I couldn't possibly have any special gifts. Nobody else had any, so why would I have them? I'm faking. I'm a faker. I'm trying to come up with some kind of scam to take things, money from people and run their minds and like that. So those are terrible thoughts to have to contend with. So I do understand the situation you're in. I had friends who ignored the topic around me. I still have people who don't discuss it with me. They don't say, what do you do? Or how do you know your gifts are from God and so forth. I don't have any more of that anymore. So I decided in my pain and grief from dealing with people who were trying to hurt me that I would go to God about it. And in those days, I understood that you could fast and God would give you a more profound answer because you were willing to sacrifice something in order to be heard and in order to receive a real spiritual answer. So I fasted for many days, and I also prayed quite a bit and just sat silently and listened. And I was very young in coming to these gifts. Um, and then I got a clear message from God in a dream, and it was something to this effect: She whom the Lord has given gifts, let no man put asunder. You follow me, daughter. So that's what I understood. So I have just taken what I could from the Bible and from my Christian teachings, and I've just thrown out the rest. Anything that cannot be used for the good in my application, I simply don't bother about trying to honor it. I have to live as a whole and a being of wholeness with her own integrity, and that's what Jesus had to do as well. So, of course, you can throw the gift back. You can not use it. You can let it die in you. You can let it sit and shrink. But I'm going to tell you this: we are a new breed of human being. Evolution will probably prove that everybody always had these abilities, and I'm told that even that some scientists think that Neanderthal and some of the early peoples of our planet actually used telepathy and psychic and had psychic connections to understanding how nature worked and when and how to go for the hunt for animals and so forth. So it's not like it's out of the question that we are evolving into a higher, more knowing breed of people. We've come into an age where we are into 5 dimensions, and those of us who are actively working are starting to experience being able to see 5 dimensionally and understand things differently than we always have. So I recommend that you look into what abilities you have and read about others who have had them and had discovered them. People like Sylvia Brown and Jean Dixon and Edgar Casey. There are numbers and numbers of psychics. Just go online and put in famous psychics, famous mediums, whatever you think would be best for your knowing. But find out, go to the library, look on the shelves for such subjects as psychometry or remote viewing. There are all kinds of gifts to be given, and so you yourself can find out what it is you have and know who else has had it and strengthen yourself if you desire. Um, One thing's for sure, I want you to ignore the dummies and the ignorant and the fearful who try to frighten you into not using what has been godly given to you. Those people cannot know that you have been appointed, that you have been selected, and in time you will be very strong. I often say, I'm strong in the Lord and the power of his might, and so shall you become. So don't cry and don't fret and don't fear, because there will come a time when you'll beg God's forgiveness for allowing people who are in the dark to make you hide your light. This is Shariananda, and I ask you to follow me on Facebook as Shariananda Beauregard Adams, and keep in touch with me through my website, which I announced earlier. Have a very good week, and I'll see you next week with the next topic.